The other thing I think is a big difference between a solo K and a SEP is a solo K will allow you to do loans. You can do a
Yeah.
loan on a 401k. So here's the thing, if you're a business owner and you're sort of scared to like put all of your money into retirement because, oh my God, what if I need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about a solo K is that you could then take a loan against the plan and pull some of that back out, put it back into your business, make your payroll or whatever you got to do, right? You handle your business. And then you can basically amortize that loan payment back into the plan. So it's not taxable income to you in that year. You still get the use of it and you can put it back so that you can still keep growing your account.
So we talked about the different accounts that you can open, like the IRAs and things like that. And we happened to touch on SEP and solo K and all of these other fun words that no one typically understands outside of our industry. There seem like there's so many options. It turns into like analysis paralysis, where people are like, I don't have one clear channel or one type of account that I like, just tell me what to open, right? Because most people just don't really know the differences. I want to just go through real quick because I think the two most prominent for our audience would be a SEP IRA and a solo 401k. Those to me are the two most popular for your starter kit business owner who is kicking things off and maybe doesn't have employees yet. But let's just go through a few things around those two types of accounts because I think that will be really, really valuable for our audience. Could you just describe each of those two types of accounts and what they do or what they are?
Sure. So a solo 401k is going to be a plan that is essentially owned and operated by your organization. Okay. Your company is going to have the plan. The company is going to decide to have the plan. They're going to make it available to you as the participant. Okay. And so both the SEP IRA and a solo 401k, they are set up by the company for the employees. So you have to kind of think about the fact you're wearing two different hats, right?
Yeah, and really quick, the when you say it's for the employees, I know that I'm only an employee technically if I have an S corp or a C corp. Now, can I participate in these if I'm just like a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, or I have a Schedule C, I'm not a corporation and I'm not an employee on the books?
You can, but you'll have to probably talk to your tax advisor about how you need to go about that to make sure that you're making the appropriate deductions and that you're making the
Right.
appropriate contributions in the right way.
Perfect. Okay, so they're both business plans set up by the business for the benefit of its workers.
Correct. So the biggest difference between a SEP IRA and a solo 401k is that in a SEP IRA, participants cannot contribute to the plan. So 100% of the contributions that are going into the plan are going into the plan by the employer, by the company. Okay.
Yep.
In a solo 401k plan, you can make deferrals to the 401k plan on your own behalf. You can get an employer match by the employer on your behalf, and your employer, your company can make a profit sharing contribution to your solo 401k plan. So you can get a lot of money shoveled into these if you have the capacity and the cash flow to be able to do that.
And does the solo 401k, for example, when we're talking about like the limits right now, right? That's a pretty high limit. I think it's one of the highest across your options. So you can contribute a lot of money into that. Now, is that a solo 401k, is that treated like a traditional or like a Roth?
So the answer is both. It depends on how you want to do it. So
Right.
you can set up a solo 401k that's a traditional 401k, in which case it would lower your current taxable income and you would be deferring that just like any other 401k plan. You can also set up a solo Roth 401k. So you could have a solo K plan that has two buckets, right? You have a Roth bucket and you have a traditional bucket. Your employer, your company, is going to make all their contributions on your behalf into the traditional bucket. And then you can split or pick one bucket or the other, right?
Right. You can kind of decide how you want to allocate, right?
Yep, exactly. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, choose your own tax treatment. I love that. I mean, there's infinite, feels like infinite options on how you can do this, which is why it can be so complicated and confusing sometimes. And so we go through the solo 401k. Now, here's the thing. I have a solo 401k, but I want to hire an employee. What does that do when I hire an employee?
So once you have another employee that is not your spouse, so solo K can be used for you and your spouse. Just throwing
Right.
that out there. Once you hire someone who is not your spouse, your solo K pretty much needs to be converted into a traditional 401k, or you need to shut it down and pick a different style of plan. And that might be a SEP IRA, that might be a simple IRA. There's a lot of different things you could do, but you have to make the decision at that juncture.
Got it. But I think I read somewhere that you have like a year of service for the employee to like gather that and get it together. Have you heard this, or do you know what there's like a grace period?
So it depends on how you set your plan up, right? So
Okay.
very often with a solo K, you'll say, look, I want it to have a gate where it says you can only contribute if you've been an employee for at least a year, right? Because you, as the person running your business, you probably
Ah,
have at least a year of experience in your business. And so you would qualify, but nobody else would, right?
gotcha.
Um, However, once, so if you set it up to where it's like you have to be 21 and you have to be an employee and you have to be non-union and you have to be, at least a year of service, then yes, you just bought yourself a year of time. If, however, you set it up, and this depends upon your own plan document, if you set it up to where you have like immediate eligibility, which I have seen before because sometimes people launch a business and they want to start shoveling money away immediately, and that's fine. But if you do immediate eligibility, then as soon as you hire a brand new person, they would theoretically be eligible, and you can't have two people in a solo K.
Got it. That's important to know. So, okay, and then the 401k plan operates pretty similarly then in terms of you get to set though as the company, do you get to set the, profit sharing contributions and the matches and stuff like that? Is that determined by anyone, or is that kind of just like you as the business owner deciding what you're comfortable contributing?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. With a 401k plan, you have the ability to use something called a safe harbor. A safe harbor is going to be basically one of three matching contributions or benevolent contributions. Like it doesn't matter what they put away, but we'll give them 3%, right? So the
Hmm.
nice thing about using a safe harbor is you can, number one, you can get some protection there. Number two, you can, if your plan would otherwise be, say, top heavy, right? Meaning that you wouldn't, as the owner, necessarily be able to put away as much as you want to because your employees aren't making a substantial enough contribution. If you're using a safe harbor, that sort of gets you around those rules a little bit. Okay.
Hmm.
But you have to follow one of those three matching safe harbor options. In addition to that, you could do extra over and above. That would be profit sharing. That could be like a non-elective contribution. It's basically a discretionary benevolent, hey, I feel like doing this for my people this day, and so I'm going to do this for you. But that piece of it typically has to follow the guidelines and all of the testing and all of that stuff. The other thing I will say is it's a lot less expensive to have a solo 401k than it is to have a traditional 401k, because once you have a plan that has multiple employees in it in that 401k kind of bucket, you're going to have testing, you're going to have an administrator, you're going to have to do 5500 filings, which is like
The tax
which
form.
is like the tax form for a retirement plan. And then of course you've got contributions as well, right? So it
Yeah,
becomes a little more complicated.
administratively there's a lot more work involved and potentially more cost, right? Because you're offering the plan to your employees.
Right. So what we see a lot of people do instead is if they go from the solo 401k and they're like, man, I really want to keep putting a lot of money away for myself, but I also want to have some sort of plan that other people can participate in. They might shift from, say, a solo 401k to maybe a simple IRA plan. Simple IRA plan is intended to be simple. So there's not like annual filings. You don't have to have a third party plan administrator, but you still must make a contribution on behalf of your employees. You either have to do like 2% of compensation or you have to do a matching contribution to 3%. So you're going to have to do something for them if you offer a plan like that. But the nice benefit is it's not complicated. It's pretty easy to administer. The one sort of drawback I think is that you can't put as much away in a simple as you could in a SEP or a solo 401k. So there's always trade-offs.
Yeah, there's the advantages and disadvantages of everything. And like I said, it's going to depend on your goals. Like do you want to, if you're not going to max out the solo 401k, then you might want to look into like a simple IRA or a SEP IRA, because then, you have that flexibility and it's just less administrative work at times. Cause I think when you have
Mhm.
a SEP, if I'm not mistaken, when you have a SEP IRA, which we'll get into in a second, which is the Simplified Employee Pension, SEP SEP. When you have that SEP IRA, employees can participate in the SEP without, like, you don't have to do quote unquote surgery to change it once you hire employees, right? Like it could go from being a solo, like a single participant, to multiple, right?
Right. In fact, it would. So
Right.
whatever you set the plan up, whatever your contributions are, whatever you decide that you're going to do, you would do that uniformly across the board for everyone who's eligible,
Right.
right? You don't really have any
Yeah.
discretion to change it up for yourself versus them.
Yeah, that's the downside, is that like
Mhm.
it has to be equitable in terms of, if I contribute X%, I get to do that for everybody. Everybody gets, it's that concept of the teacher saying like, you brought gum, did you bring enough for everybody? It's
Exactly.
that's how it feels like the SEP. I try to explain to clients, I go, you brought gum to class and now you have to bring enough for everybody because you don't get it without everybody else getting it. And sometimes that's good. And sometimes, that can be a lot for an entrepreneur to manage because they want to be generous, but like, we have a business to run, we have cash flows to take care of. So let's go into the SEP IRA real quick. So how does the SEP IRA differ from the solo 401k? And I'll just pause there and ask, who are each of these good for? Like if you had to put a descriptor on like an ideal person for a solo 401k versus a SEP IRA, what to look for.
Okay, cool. So solo 401k is going to be a business or a self-employed individual with no employees other than them and their spouse. Period,
Hmm.
full stop. So if you are outside of that band, that is not the plan for you. A SEP IRA would be good for any employer, really. Um, with a solo 401k, you are making contributions on your own behalf, and you are also getting contributions on behalf of the company. With a SEP IRA, participants don't participate, like they're not making contribution elections. It's just the business owner making a contribution on their behalf. So think of it sort of like a bonus, but instead of you're paying the bonus out, you're putting the bonus into retirement. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Totally.
Um, the nice thing about um, so you got different limits as well. So with a SEP, you can do a contribution up to the lesser of 25% of compensation or $61,000. Okay.
Right.
There are some special rules for self-employed people, but that's the gist of it. And then for the solo 401k, you're going to be able to get, up to $61,000 plus you can do, extra over and above. So you still can't exceed 25% of gross income for corporations, 20% of net income for sole proprietors or partnerships, but you can theoretically get quite a bit of money in there,
Totally.
and
And
more
yeah,
than you can with the SEP. But you
yeah.
can also, yeah. And I like the piece about having a spouse. Because I mean, I don't know about your business, but a lot of businesses, they have a spouse who might even be, sort of quasi part-time, but you can still benefit yourself and your spouse up to their total, like their earned income. So that could be really substantial in a dual earning environment where your company is paying both and you're trying to really maximize that retirement savings.
Yeah, that's one of the few reasons why I have a list of these reasons why it makes sense to be, hire your spouse into the business. Because number one, you get a couple of date nights with business meals, you get a couple of, business trips with them, with you, with meetings and things like that. And then the other one is they can participate in your 401k plan, even if it's a solo 401k plan. And so here's a good question, because I've seen this situation a lot where, let's just say I hired my husband, I'm just hypothetically, hired my husband into my business. I have a solo 401k plan. He wants to participate, but he works for a company and also participates in their 401k plan. Does that limit his ability to participate in mine? Because can he do like 61,000 and open up like 5 different 401k plans if he has the money?
So you can theoretically open up as many 401k plans as you want, but you as a human being cannot exceed that annual,
So
that
across
max.
all of them, I can't do more than 61.
Correct. So the way that I see people kind of using that is like if you have an employer and they give you a match, let's say their match is 3%, you might do 3% over there, get your 3% match. And then over here, you might do another 3% and get your 3% match. And then over here, you might do all of the rest of it and get your match and your profit sharing and all the goodies, right? But
Right.
collectively across all of them, you can't have more than the max.
And that's adding in the matching and adding in everything else that has to go into the total, right?
Yes, and if you're over 50, you can have a catch up. Like it's all of that,
Yeah,
right?
gotcha.
The other thing I think is a big difference between a solo K and a SEP is a solo K will allow you to do loans. You can do a
Yeah.
loan on a 401k. So here's the thing, if you're a business owner and you're sort of scared to like put all of your money into retirement because oh my God, what if I need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about a solo K is that you could then take a loan against the plan and pull some of that back out, put it back into your business, make your payroll or whatever you got to do, right? You handle your business. And then you can basically amortize that loan payment back into the plan. So it's not taxable income to you in that year. You still get the use of it and you can put it back so that you can still keep growing your account.
So basically, you just unlock your access to that money again without tax consequences, it sounds like, which is pretty cool.
Correct.
And including the penalties, right? Because we didn't talk about this, but there's taxes, but there's penalties if you take out money too early. So are you also avoiding penalties with that?
Yep, absolutely.
Super cool. And believe we talked about this on a prior episode, guys, with Daniel Blue. So check that out. We talk about self-directed solo 401k, which is what I believe this is. Do you have to have a self-directed solo 401k in order to take that loan out against it? Or is that available to anyone with a solo 401k?
So it's available to anybody who has a loan provision in their plan. So
Ah, okay.
it's more dependent upon where you set it up and whose plan documents you're using. Most of your
Okay.
providers that are going to make those available to you, they're going to have a prototype standardized plan, and then they're going to give you this many options to make like just a few little tweaks and changes that you want to make. And outside of those tweaks and changes that are offered, you're not going to have a lot of tremendous flexibility outside of that. So
Okay.
if you're with a provider that allows for Roth, then you can do Roth solo K. If you're with a provider that allows loans, then you can do loans on your retirement plan as well.
That's super helpful. So how would you recommend, Jessica, that folks, again, the first step to get started, right? This is a lot of information. I'm sure people took notes if they're not driving, or they're going to mark this to listen to when they get home and research these different things. But what would you say is the first step in terms of either learning about this, exploring it, or taking action to go start an account now? Like, what is the first step for someone who's just getting introduced to this on this show?
So honestly, the easiest baby step is to like set up either a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA and start saving something, right? Try and get to
Totally.
your maximum contribution if you can. Once you are at a place where you're like, hey, I'm hitting right up against that maximum level, now is that's a good time to start thinking about, do I want to go solo K? Do I want to go SEP IRA? Which one's going to be a better decision for me? And if you're a small business owner, you probably have like, hey, this is what my projection is for next year, for 5 years from now. And so you kind of have it mapped out in your brain, at least, what you think your employee situation is going to be. And so that can help kind of steer you in one direction or another, because there's really nothing more disruptive than like having to constantly change your plan. So it would be nice to be able to sort of say, look, for the next maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, this is the one that I think is going to work best for me and my business and my people.
I love that. And let's say someone wants, they know that, okay, Jessica, this is super helpful. I know I need to do this, but I just want someone to help me. What's the best way to get help, and what's the best way to get in touch with you if folks have questions, and where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on the internet. We have a website, searcyfinancial.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at Jessica Kmetty. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and all the social.
All the
So it's pretty
places.
easy to reach out and connect with me. I'd be happy to have that conversation. But I will say, I think the number one thing is just making sure, if you're going to hire an advisor, if you're going to hire somebody to help you with this, either on the setting it up, the managing it, the doing the investments, or the giving you guidance, make sure it's somebody that's going to be working in your best interest. Hire somebody who is fee only. Hire somebody that you are paying or that your assets are paying, not that, somebody who has multiple different disinterested parties that are paying you behind, under the table and behind a closed door. Like, don't go that route. Get somebody that's
Yeah.
fully independent, fee only, transparent.
And you've said fee only a couple times. Can you just define, when you say fee only, what does that mean?
Yeah, so fee only means that when an advisor gets paid, they're only getting a fee that is a fee that you are paying. So you're writing them a check, you're doing an ACH, like you're the one that's paying their fee. They're not getting any kind of commission. They're not getting payment from any third party. They're not getting payment from any kind of product. So these are all like non-product, non-sales people. They're just giving good advice, more like an accountant or a lawyer would give, a fee for service, right?
Yeah, no
That's going to be
conflict
that
of
realm.
interest or mixed loyalty or anything like that.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all this knowledge with our audience here. And listener, if you are in a position where you learned something new today, which I hope you did, I learned something new, so I know you did, and you can share your biggest takeaway from today's episode, anything that you learned, and make sure you tag me at Shannon K. Weinstein. And Jessica, say your handle one more time.
It's Jessica Kmetty.
Jessica Kmetty, and make sure you share it on your Instagram stories and tell us what you took away from today's episode. Jessica, thank you again for hopping on and spending your time with me today.
Thank you so much.